A tense encounter between Chinese jets and a U.S. warship in the volatile South China Sea has the world holding its breath. With both nations ramping up their military posturing, is this the spark that could ignite a catastrophic conflict? Stay tuned as we unravel the high-stakes maneuvers, hidden agendas, and what this means for the future of global stability. The strategic importance of the South China Sea. The South China Sea is one of the busiest waterways in the world, with over $3 trillion worth of trade passing through it annually. Roughly one-third of global maritime cargo traverses these waters, underscoring its critical role in international commerce. Additionally, the seabed beneath these waters holds vast reserves of oil and natural gas, further enhancing the region's strategic importance. China has laid claim to nearly 90% of the South China Sea. Based on the so-called 9-dash line, this claim has been rejected by an international arbitration ruling in 2016, which declared that China had no legal basis for such assertions. Despite the ruling, China has continued to expand its military presence in the region, constructing artificial islands and turning them into fortified military bases. These moves have drawn pushback from neighboring countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia, as well as the United States, which views China's actions as a direct challenge to international law and its own strategic interests. A region of rising tensions. Over the past decade, incidents involving U.S. and Chinese military forces have become increasingly common in the South China Sea. The United States conducts freedom of navigation operations in these disputed waters to challenge China's territorial claims. These operations involve U.S. naval vessels and aircraft deliberately passing through areas claimed by China to underscore that they remain international waters under international law. China, however, views these actions as provocations and often responds with aggressive maneuvers. For instance, in February 2023, a Chinese J-11 fighter jet performed a dangerously close maneuver near a U.S. reconnaissance aircraft coming within 20 feet of it. Such close encounters are fraught with risk, as even a slight miscalculation could lead to a catastrophic collision. Similarly, in June 2023, a Chinese military vessel came within 150 yards of the USS John S. McCain, a U.S. destroyer in the Taiwan Strait. Such incidents highlight the razor-thin margin for error in these high-stakes confrontations. Causes of the escalating tensions. The roots of the conflict in the South China Sea can be traced to two primary factors: economic interests and strategic competition. Economic interests. China views control over the South China Sea as essential for securing its trade routes and accessing the region's abundant energy resources. For the United States, the waterway represents a vital component of the global trade network and energy security. Losing influence in the region would not only weaken the United States' strategic position, but also signal a shift in the balance of power in favor of China. Strategic rivalry. The South China Sea has become a symbol of the broader competition between China and the United States. For Beijing, controlling the region is a way to assert its growing influence and secure its borders. For Washington, pushing back against China's claims is essential to maintaining its role as a global leader and protecting the interests of its allies in the Asia-Pacific region. The risk of escalation. The South China Sea has become a dangerous flashpoint where the risk of accidental escalation between the United States and China is growing. Despite established protocols to manage encounters, the increasing frequency and intensity of confrontations amplify the possibility of a small incident spiraling into a larger conflict. China's assertive actions, such as building military bases on artificial islands and intercepting foreign vessels, are meant to reinforce its territorial claims. Meanwhile, the U.S. conducts freedom of navigation operations to challenge these claims and uphold international maritime law. These actions often lead to close encounters between military ships and aircraft, where a single misstep, miscommunication, or human error could trigger a crisis. The stakes are further heightened by political pressures in both nations. For China, control of the South China Sea is tied to its national sovereignty and security, while for the U.S., maintaining a presence in the region is crucial to its global leadership. With neither side willing to back down, each provocation risks crossing a dangerous threshold. As these incidents escalate, the potential for miscalculation grows, making it essential for both nations to strengthen communication channels and prioritize de-escalation to prevent a catastrophic conflict. Protocols for engagement. The U.S. naval and air crews are trained to follow strict protocols to avoid accidental confrontations. These include using radar and sensors to monitor approaching Chinese vessels or aircraft, attempting to establish communication through international channels, and altering course if necessary to avoid collisions. However, these measures are not always enough to prevent aggressive actions by the Chinese side. For example, during a freedom of navigation operation in 2018 near the disputed Spratly Islands, a Chinese destroyer came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur, forcing the U.S. ship to take evasive action. Such incidents underscore the fine line between routine operations and dangerous confrontations, the possibility of armed conflict. If a Chinese vessel or aircraft were to take overtly hostile actions such as attempting to ram a U.S. ship or threatening its crew, the U.S. could respond with force. Under international law and U.S. military rules of engagement, the use of lethal force is permitted in self-defense. However, such a response would almost certainly escalate the situation with potentially catastrophic consequences. What happens if an incident turns deadly? A deadly incident involving U.S. and Chinese forces would dramatically escalate tensions and could even lead to war. The global reaction would depend on several factors, including the severity of the incident, which side suffered casualties, and the broader geopolitical climate at the time. Public and political pressure. If American personnel were killed, there would likely be immense pressure on the U.S. government to respond forcefully. Public opinion and political leaders would demand justice, potentially leading to an increased military presence in the region or even direct retaliation. On the other hand, if Chinese personnel or civilians were killed, Beijing would almost certainly escalate its rhetoric and military actions, citing the need to defend its sovereignty. The fear of nuclear escalation. Both the United States and China are nuclear powers, and the risk of escalation to a nuclear conflict cannot be dismissed. While both sides would likely prefer to avoid such a scenario, the pressure to save face in the wake of a deadly incident could push leaders toward more aggressive actions. Historical examples, such as the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, demonstrate how quickly tensions can spiral out of control. However, there is also a growing willingness among some nuclear-armed nations to consider the use of tactical nuclear weapons in limited conflicts, further increasing the risks. The road ahead. The South China Sea remains one of the most volatile regions in the world, with the potential for incidents to escalate into full-scale conflicts. Both the United States and China face a delicate balancing act, asserting their interests without crossing the line into open warfare. The stakes are high, not just for the two nations involved, but for the entire world, given the potential for a conflict to disrupt global trade and stability. As tensions continue to simmer, the international community must push for diplomatic solutions to avoid a catastrophic outcome. Whether through multilateral negotiations or confidence-building measures, de-escalating the situation in the South China Sea is essential for maintaining peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region. The South China Sea remains a powder keg, where one wrong move could lead to devastating consequences. As the U.S. and China continue their dangerous dance, the question looms: how far will they go before diplomacy is abandoned? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights into today's most pressing global issues. Together, we can stay informed and prepared for what's next. See you in the next video.